The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched 500 meters in every direction. Representatives from over 100 worlds sat in their designated sections, their varied forms creating a tapestry of the galaxy's diversity. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on legs, others floated in containment fields. But today, every eye and sensor turned toward the human standing alone at the center platform. Ambassador Elena Voss kept her face calm. She had practiced this expression for weeks, knowing this moment would come. Her simple gray suit contrasted sharply with the elaborate robes and technological augmentations worn by the other delegates. She looked small and insignificant under the massive domed ceiling. And that was exactly how the Korvax Empire wanted her to appear. High Commander Throcknor of the Korvax Empire rose from his elevated seat. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the chamber lights. His species had conquered 17 star systems in the past century. They possessed weapons that could crack planets and shields that bent space itself. When he spoke, his voice boomed through translation devices. Humanity stands at a crossroads, Throcknor declared. Your species has expanded into territories that the Korvax Empire claims by right of ancient treaties. You have 48 hours to accept our terms. Surrender your military forces. Accept Korvax governors on all human worlds. Submit to our rule, or face total war. Murmurs rippled through the council chamber. The Xyloth delegation, insectoid beings with compound eyes, clicked their mandibles in what might have been sympathy. The Kaldari, crystalline entities that communicated through light pulses, dimmed slightly in what their species considered a gesture of mourning. Everyone knew what this ultimatum meant. Elena accessed the data display on her wrist console. The numbers appeared in holographic form above her head for all to see. The human military consisted of approximately 3,000 warships. They were modern vessels, well-designed and efficiently crewed. Humanity had been proud of building such a force in only 2 centuries of spaceflight. The Korvax Empire possessed 50,000 warships. Each one was larger than the best human vessel. Each one carried weapons that could destroy a human ship in seconds. Their shields could absorb sustained fire from dozens of human missiles. Their sensors could detect a human fleet from 3 star systems away. The math was simple. The conclusion was obvious. Humanity could not win. The Council recognizes the difficult position humanity faces, said Speaker Voresh, the elected head of the Galactic Council. The elderly Zentari looked down at Elena with genuine sadness in his many-faceted eyes. Does humanity request council mediation? Elena knew what that meant. Mediation would result in slightly better surrender terms. Perhaps the Korvax would allow human cultural practices to continue. Perhaps they would not strip every world of resources. Perhaps they would treat human citizens as second-class subjects rather than slaves. It was still surrender. The Council cannot intervene militarily, added Ambassador Quellen of the Hectory Union, one of the more powerful council members. The Korvax have not violated galactic law. Their claim to the disputed territories has historical precedent. And frankly, no alliance of council members wishes to face Korvax military power over human independence. Translation: You are alone. We will watch you fall. We will offer words of sympathy, but we will not risk our own worlds for yours. Elena had expected this. Her intelligence briefings had predicted every word of this session. Earth's diplomats had spent months trying to build alliances, offering trade deals and technology exchanges. Some species had been sympathetic. None had been willing to fight. High Commander Throcknor smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Humanity is young. Your species has talent and potential. Under Korvax guidance, you could become valuable members of our empire. Resist, and we will demonstrate why 17 civilizations chose submission over destruction. Your 3,000 ships will burn. Your worlds will be occupied. Your people will learn that defiance has consequences. The chamber fell silent. This was the moment. Elena was supposed to ask for more time to consult with Earth. She was supposed to show fear, desperation, perhaps anger. The psychological profile that Korvax intelligence had built on humanity suggested they would rage against the inevitable before finally accepting reality. Instead, Elena smiled. It was a small smile, barely noticeable, but several delegates who had been watching her closely saw it. The Xyloth ambassador leaned forward, antennae twitching. Something was wrong. Humans did not smile when facing extinction. High Commander, Elena said, her voice steady and clear, Humanity appreciates the generosity of your offer. We request 72 hours to consider your terms and prepare our response. Surely you can grant us 3 days to make such a momentous decision. Throcknor laughed, a deep booming sound. 3 days to delay the inevitable? Very well, Ambassador. Humanity may have its 72 hours. We are not unreasonable. Use this time to say goodbye to your independence. Use it to prepare your people for the wisdom of accepting Korvac's rule. When the time expires, we expect your unconditional surrender. Elena bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that cost her nothing. Thank you, High Commander. Humanity will use this time wisely. She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Delegates whispered among themselves. Some felt relief that war might be avoided. Others felt pity for the doomed human species. A few felt unease at Elena's calm demeanor, but they dismissed it as shock or denial. As Elena passed through the massive doors, she activated her secure communication device. The message was brief, encrypted with codes that changed every microsecond, bounced through relay stations across human space to ensure it could not be intercepted or traced. 4 words appeared on her screen, confirming the message had been received by Earth Command. Execute Protocol Lazarus. Across human space, in locations known only to a handful of people with the highest security clearance, ancient systems began to wake. Communication arrays that had sat dormant for generations suddenly came online. These were not the standard communication networks used for civilian traffic or military coordination. These were older, built with outdated technology that modern sensors barely recognized as active systems. In the asteroid fields of the Kuiper Belt, automated beacons activated. In the frozen methane clouds of distant gas giants, relay stations that had been disguised as research outposts began transmitting. In regions of space marked on all human star charts as hazardous dead space or unsuitable for navigation, where civilian and military vessels never ventured, signals reached their destinations. The signals traveled for hours, crossing vast distances, moving through regions where no active human presence was supposed to exist. They reached coordinates that appeared empty on every sensor sweep. Locations where space itself seemed to be nothing but void and radiation. And in those empty places, something ancient began to respond. Power cores that had idled for decades started to pulse with energy. Reactor systems that had maintained minimum function suddenly surged toward full capacity. Navigation computers that had slept in standby mode initiated startup sequences. Life support systems began filtering air and adjusting temperature. In the furthest reaches of human territory, beyond the trade routes, beyond the mapped systems, beyond where any galactic species bothered to look, 800,000 ancient warships started to wake up. The galaxy had 48 hours before it learned that humanity had been keeping a secret for over 2 centuries. A secret that would change the balance of power forever. A secret that would make the Korvax Empire's 50,000 ships seem inadequate. But for now, the Galactic Council adjourned, confident they knew what would happen next. Humanity would surrender. The Korvax would win. The galaxy would continue as it always had, with the strong ruling the weak. They could not have been more wrong. Commander Marcus Chen's courier ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at coordinates that should not exist. His navigation computer insisted that nothing was here. The star chart showed only empty space, radiation fields, and the scattered debris of ancient comets. This region was classified as Zone 17, a designation that meant hazardous dead space, unsuitable for travel or habitation. Marcus knew better. His grandfather had told him stories, whispered secrets that were passed down through certain families. Stories about ships that never died. Stories about a fleet that slept in the darkness, waiting for the day humanity needed it. His grandfather had served in the Dreadnought Corps before it was officially disbanded 150 years ago. The old man had spent 40 years in suspended animation, aging only 5 years while the world moved on without him. When he finally retired, his children were older than he was. His wife had remarried, believing him dead. The government had given him a pension and a medal he could never show anyone. They told us we were obsolete, his grandfather had said on his deathbed, gripping Marcus's hand with surprising strength. They told the galaxy we scrapped the old ships. They lied. We're still out there, boy. 800,000 of us, sleeping, waiting. If humanity ever needs us, we'll wake up. Marcus had joined the military partly because of those stories. He had worked his way up through intelligence divisions, earned his security clearances, asked the right questions to the right people. Eventually, someone had noticed his grandfather's service record. Eventually, someone had given him access to files that officially did not exist. Now he was here, following coordinates that had been transmitted through channels so secure that even the encryption was classified. His sensors showed nothing, but sensors could be fooled. He transmitted the activation code. It was a long string of numbers and letters that changed based on quantum algorithms. If he got even one character wrong, nothing would happen. If he got it right, he would see something no one outside a very small group had witnessed in decades. The response was immediate. Space itself seemed to ripple. What Marcus had thought was empty void suddenly revealed itself as something else entirely. Camouflage fields that had been active for generations dropped, their power cores finally given permission to rest. Stealth systems that bent light and masked gravitational signatures deactivated, and the fleet appeared. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He had read the reports. He had seen the inventory numbers. He had studied the strategic documentation. None of it had prepared him for the reality. Stretching across millions of cubic kilometers arranged in perfect formation were more warships than he had ever imagined seeing in one place. Row after row, column after column, layer after layer, the Dreadnoughts filled his view screen and extended beyond his visual range. His computer started counting and gave up, simply displaying error, too many vessels to enumerate. These were the old ships. The Valiant-class Dreadnoughts, each one a kilometer long, bristling with missile tubes and railgun batteries. The Titan series heavy cruisers, massive brick-shaped vessels designed to absorb punishment and keep fighting. The legendary Defiant-type battleships, the pride of Earth's early space navy, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent. They were ancient by modern standards. The newest designs were over a century old. The oldest dated back nearly 300 years, to humanity's first desperate attempts to defend themselves as they expanded into a dangerous galaxy. They looked crude compared to modern vessels, their armor thick and their hulls covered in backup systems and redundant components. But they were magnificent. Marcus guided his courier ship toward the largest vessel, a Titan-class command ship that dominated even this massive fleet, the UHN's Indomitable. He had read about this ship in history books. It had fought in the Centauri conflicts. It had defended Earth during the Proxima crisis. It had been declared lost with all hands during a training exercise 147 years ago. It had been waiting here ever since. The docking bay opened, and Marcus brought his ship in. The bay was cavernous, designed to hold dozens of smaller craft. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. As his ship settled onto the deck, he saw figures moving in the shadows. People in uniforms that looked slightly wrong, cut in styles that had not been fashionable for generations. The airlock cycled. Marcus stepped out and found himself face to face with Admiral Sarah Keating. She was younger than he expected. Perhaps 40 years old, though her personnel file said she was 73. She had spent 33 of those years in suspended animation, aging slowly while she waited for a call that might never come. She wore a uniform from an earlier era, with rank insignia that the modern fleet no longer used. "Commander Chen," she said, returning his salute crisply. "Welcome to the Ort Reserve. I served with your grandfather. He was a good man. I'm sorry he didn't live to see this day." "Thank you, Admiral." Marcus looked around the massive bay. "I read the reports, but seeing it in person is different. How many ships are actually here?" "In this reserve?" 43,721. Admiral Keating started walking, gesturing for Marcus to follow. "There are 18 other reserves scattered throughout the outer system. Some in the Kuiper Belt, some hidden in the Oort Cloud, a few disguised as asteroid clusters or comet formations. Total fleet strength is 804,309 vessels. We lost a few over the years to reactor failures or system malfunctions, but maintenance crews replaced them with new builds from the hidden shipyards." Marcus did the math in his head. 800,000 ships, each one crewed by at least 500 people minimum.
How many personnel?
400 million, give or take. Admiral Keating led him through corridors that hummed with increasing power. Most are in suspended animation, waking up now that Protocol Lazarus has been activated. Support crews cycle through on 20-year shifts, maintaining the ships and training new recruits. Some of us have been out here for decades. Others just arrived. But we all volunteered. We all knew what we were signing up for. They entered the command center, a vast room filled with displays and tactical stations. Crew members were taking their positions, running system checks, bringing ancient but well-maintained equipment online. Every face Marcus saw was focused, professional, and absolutely serious. Admiral Keating brought up a holographic display showing the entire fleet. The galaxy thinks these ships are obsolete. They're wrong. These vessels were built with one purpose, to be so numerous and so tough that no enemy could afford to fight them. Yes, a modern Korvax cruiser could destroy one of our dreadnoughts in a fair fight. Maybe even 5 or 10. But could it destroy 100? 1,000? 10,000? She zoomed the display to show a tactical comparison. The Korvax build elegant ships. Beautiful, efficient, deadly. Each one costs them enormous resources. They have 50,000, because that's all they can afford to maintain. We built ours crude and simple. Heavy armor instead of shields. Redundant systems instead of elegant integration. Mass-produced components instead of custom engineering. We could build 100 dreadnoughts for the cost of one modern cruiser. Marcus studied the displays. The dreadnoughts were indeed simple compared to modern warships. Their weapons were older designs, their engines less efficient, their sensors less sophisticated, but they had been upgraded over the decades. Modern targeting computers had been retrofitted. Improved reactor cores had been installed. Updated communication systems had been integrated. We've spent 150 years preparing for this moment, Admiral Keating continued. Every generation of engineers has upgraded these ships, quietly, secretly, using resources diverted from projects the public knew about. Maintaining a fleet the galaxy thinks doesn't exist, and now finally, we get to show them why quantity has a quality all its own. Across the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Veterans were emerging from suspended animation pods, their bodies adjusting to consciousness after years or decades of sleep. They were disoriented, confused, asking what year it was, whether their families were still alive. But they were also trained, experienced, and ready. Maintenance crews who had spent years in isolation were greeting the returning warriors. Engineers who had dedicated their careers to keeping ancient ships functional were seeing their work validated. Commanders who had drilled their crews endlessly for a war that might never come were finally able to put their training to use. The ancient dreadnoughts, dismissed by the galaxy as primitive relics, began their flight checks. Engines that had idled for generations roared to full power. Weapon systems that had been maintained but never fired in anger cycled through their activation sequences. Navigation computers plotted courses to destinations that would shock the Korvax Empire. How long until we can move? Marcus asked. Admiral Keating checked her displays. 12 hours for full fleet readiness. We'll start moving in waves. The Korvax are staging their fleet at the edge of human space, confident in their superiority. They're about to learn that humanity doesn't play by their rules. She pulled up an image of High Commander Throcknor, captured from the Galactic Council broadcast. He thinks we have 3,000 ships. He thinks we're weak. He thinks we'll surrender like every other High Commander. Throcknor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His fleet of 50,000 warships held perfect formation at the edge of human space. Each vessel represented the peak of Korvax military engineering. Each one carried shields that could withstand sustained bombardment and weapons that could turn planets to dust. The humans had 24 hours left to surrender. Throcknor had no doubt they would comply. Every species eventually understood that resistance against Korvax military might was futile. The humans were young, barely 2 centuries into spaceflight. They would learn the same lesson 17 other civilizations had learned. Status report, he commanded. His tactical officer, a young Korvax named Velnar, checked his displays. All vessels report ready status, High Commander. Long-range sensors show minimal human fleet activity. Their ships remain in defensive positions around their core worlds. No signs of mobilization for offensive action. Because they know they cannot win, Throcknor said. They will posture and delay, but ultimately they will surrender. It is the only logical choice. His communication officer interrupted. High Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the human ambassador. She requests a face-to-face meeting to discuss surrender terms. Throcknor's mandibles clicked in amusement. Of course she does. They want to negotiate the best terms possible for their capitulation. Very well. Tell Ambassador Voss that I will receive her delegation aboard this ship in 12 hours. Let them come and see the fleet that will conquer them if they refuse our generous offer. The bridge crew worked efficiently, monitoring sensors and managing the fleet's position. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Throcknor had executed this scenario 7 times before with other species. The pattern was always the same: initial defiance, desperate negotiation attempts, and finally surrender when they truly understood the impossibility of victory. Then the alarms began. The sound was subtle at first, just a minor alert from the sensor stations, but within seconds it escalated to a full emergency tone that filled the entire bridge. Warning lights flashed red. Tactical displays lit up with contact markers appearing faster than the computers could process. Report, Throcknor barked, his 4 arms gripping the command console. Velnar stared at his screens, his expression confused. High Commander, we are detecting massive fleet signatures emerging from FTL. Multiple vectors. Hundreds of vessels. No, thousands. The computer is still counting. Thousands? Throcknor moved to look at the tactical display himself. It showed the Korvax fleet as a tight formation in blue. Surrounding them, appearing from every direction, were red markers indicating hostile contacts. The computer was adding new contacts every second. This must be a sensor malfunction. The humans do not have thousands of ships. Recalibrating sensors now, the sensor officer reported, his fingers moving rapidly across his console. Running full diagnostic. High Commander, the sensors are functioning normally. The contacts are real. We are detecting ship signatures on all sides of our position. The tactical display updated, and Throcknor felt something he had not experienced in decades. Genuine shock. The red markers had multiplied. They formed a sphere around the Korvax fleet, surrounding them completely. The computer had stopped trying to count individual vessels and instead displayed a simple message. Enemy fleet size 800,000 plus vessels. That is impossible, Throcknor said quietly. No species in the galaxy has that many warships. Even the combined fleets of all council members together do not number more than 200,000. Scanning vessel types, Velnar reported. High Commander, the computer identifies these as human designs but very old ones. Dreadnought-class vessels mostly. Designs dating back 100 to 300 years. Ships that were supposedly decommissioned and scrapped generations ago. The main view screen activated, showing the space around the Eternal Conquest. Where there had been empty void before, there were now warships. Endless rows of warships. They stretched in every direction, their formation so vast that the distant ones appeared as tiny points of light. Each ship was massive, a kilometer or more in length, covered in armor and bristling with weapons. They were crude compared to Korvax vessels. Their designs were boxy and inelegant. Their engines glowed with older fusion technology rather than modern antimatter cores. Their surfaces showed the wear of age and the patches of constant repair. But there were so many of them. The sheer number made Throcknor's tactical experience scream warnings. Receiving transmission, the communication officer said, his voice shaking slightly, from the human ambassador. Elena Voss's face appeared on the screen. She was not aboard a diplomatic shuttle approaching the Korvax flagship. Instead, she stood on what appeared to be the bridge of a warship, surrounded by human officers in uniform. Behind her, through the viewports, the Korvax fleet was visible, surrounded by the sphere of ancient dreadnoughts. High Commander Throcknor, Elena said, her voice calm and professional. You wanted to discuss terms. I believe we should have that discussion now. Throcknor took a moment to compose himself. He was a military leader with 40 years of experience. He had fought in 18 campaigns. He would not show fear to these humans. Ambassador Voss, this is an impressive display. You have revealed a hidden fleet. But surely you understand that quantity does not overcome quality. My vessels are superior to your ancient ships in every measurable way. You're absolutely correct, Elena agreed. Any one of your ships could destroy a dozen of ours. Perhaps more. Your technology is more advanced. Your shields are stronger. Your weapons are more powerful. We acknowledge all of that. She paused, letting her words sink in. But High Commander, we brought 800,000 ships. Your computers are doing the math right now. Let me help you with the calculation. Even if each of your 50,000 ships destroys 15 of ours before being destroyed themselves, you will lose your entire fleet. and we will still have 750,000 vessels remaining. Throcknor's tactical officer was indeed running those calculations. The results appeared on a secondary screen, and they were devastating. Even with the most optimistic projections of Korvac's superiority, the numbers did not favor them. His fleet could inflict massive casualties on the humans, but they would be overwhelmed by sheer volume. "You cannot possibly crew that many ships," Throcknor said, though he knew even as he spoke that it was a weak argument. "The logistics alone would be impossible." "We've had 150 years to prepare," Elena replied. "Generations of volunteers entering suspended animation, waiting for the day they might be needed. Hidden training facilities, secret shipyards, resources diverted carefully over decades. We built this fleet slowly, quietly, while the galaxy assumed we were weak. We let you underestimate us because underestimation is a weapon too." The sphere of Dreadnoughts tightened slightly, a coordinated movement that demonstrated their coordination. They moved in perfect formation despite their age, their crews clearly experienced and well-drilled. Whatever Throcknor had expected from humans, this level of military discipline was not it. "The Galactic Council will condemn this deception." Throcknor tried another approach. "You have violated the spirit of peaceful coexistence. You have hidden a military force larger than anything else in known space." "The Council will be shocked," Elena admitted. "They will demand explanations. Some will accuse us of militarism, but they will also realize that we have just demonstrated we could conquer any of them if we wanted to. And yet for 150 years we kept this fleet secret and used it for nothing. We built it only for defense, only as a deterrent, only so we would never have to use it." She leaned forward slightly. "You came here expecting an easy conquest, High Commander. You expected us to surrender like the 17 species you've subjugated before us. But humans are different. We remember our history. We remember being conquered and enslaved by other humans. We swore that would never happen to us again from anyone. So we built insurance, 800,000 pieces of insurance." Throcknor looked at his tactical displays. His military training ran through scenarios, calculating odds, projecting outcomes. Every simulation ended the same way. The Korvac's fleet would be destroyed. They would inflict heavy casualties, perhaps destroy 200,000 human ships. But they would lose completely, utterly. Not a single Korvac's vessel would survive, and for what? To conquer a species that had proven they would fight to the last ship? To occupy worlds that would resist for generations? To achieve a victory so costly that the Korvac's empire would be crippled? "What are your terms?" Throcknor asked quietly. "Simple," Elena said. "Withdraw your fleet. Rescind your claim to human territories. Acknowledge human sovereignty. In exchange, we will return to our borders and this fleet will disappear again. The galaxy can go back to normal. You can report to your emperor that humanity was not worth the cost of conquest. And if I refuse?" Elena's expression did not change. "Then we fight. Your fleet will be destroyed. Mine will suffer heavy losses but will survive. Then those 700,000 remaining ships will visit the Korvac's home system and demonstrate that we can do to you what you." The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened just 8 hours after the Korvac's withdrawal. Speaker Voresh looked older than usual as he called the assembly to order. Representatives from every member species filled the chamber, but the atmosphere was completely different from the previous session. Fear had replaced pity, suspicion had replaced sympathy. Ambassador Elena Voss stood once again at the center platform. This time no one looked at her with pity. The delegation from the Hectari Union kept their distance, their body language defensive. The Xyloth representatives clicked their mandibles in agitation. Even the normally peaceful Kaldari pulsed with colors that indicated distress. "Ambassador Voss," Speaker Voresh began, his voice tight with controlled anger. "The Council demands an explanation. For over a century, humanity has participated in galactic affairs while concealing a military force larger than the combined fleets of all member worlds. This deception undermines the trust that is fundamental to our alliance." Elena had prepared for this. She had spent the past hours with Earth's diplomatic team, crafting a response that would be honest but not apologetic. "Speaker Voresh, honored delegates, I understand your shock and concern. What I'm about to tell you is the truth, without excuse or apology." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Images of warfare, destruction, and conquest filled the air above her. "My species has a violent past. For thousands of years, humans fought humans. We conquered, enslaved, and destroyed each other repeatedly. We learned hard lessons about what happens when the strong prey upon the weak. The images shifted to show humanity's expansion into space. When we reached the stars and discovered we were not alone, we made a choice. We would never again be victims of conquest. We would build a defense so powerful that no rational enemy would attack us. But we also understood that if we revealed such a defense, we would trigger an arms race. Every species would feel threatened. Wars would start preemptively. "So you lied to us," interrupted Ambassador Quellen of the Hectary Union. "You sat in these chambers, voted on security agreements, participated in mutual defense discussions, all while hiding a fleet that could conquer us all." "Could, but would not," Elena emphasized. "For 150 years we have had this capability. In that time, have we threatened anyone? Have we used our hidden fleet for any purpose except defending ourselves from Korvax aggression? Have we demanded tributes, claimed territories, or bullied smaller species?" The chamber fell silent. It was true. Humanity had been, if anything, unusually cooperative members of the Galactic Council. They had honored their treaties, respected borders, and engaged in fair trade. They had never threatened military action against anyone. "The issue is trust," said Ambassador Zelthar of the Minoran Compact, a species that had been enslaved by the Korvax decades ago before buying their freedom. "How can we trust any human statement now? How do we know this fleet is truly defensive? How do we know you will not use it to build an empire?" Elena nodded, acknowledging the legitimate concern. "You cannot know. You must make the same choice we made 150 years ago. You must decide whether our actions over time indicate our true intentions. But I will make you this offer. Humanity will allow independent inspectors to observe our fleet. You may verify that it is stationed in defensive positions, that it is not being mobilized for aggression, that it serves only as a deterrent. Inspectors can be fooled," another delegate called out. "Ships can be moved." "True," Elena agreed. "But consider this, we revealed the fleet when we had to. We could have kept it hidden. The Korvax would have attacked. We would have defended ourselves with ships they believed we possessed, and your species would have remained ignorant. Instead, we showed our full strength to prevent a war. Does that sound like the action of a species planning conquest?" Speaker Voresh held up a hand for silence. "Ambassador Voss, the Council will deliberate on this matter. But you must understand that the galaxy has fundamentally changed. The balance of power has shifted. Species that felt secure now feel vulnerable. This will have consequences." "I understand, Speaker," Elena said quietly, "but I would ask the Council to consider what the alternative would have been. If humanity had not built this fleet, the Korvax would have conquered us. They would have been emboldened by easy victory. How many other species would have fallen next? How many of you would have faced similar ultimatums?" That caused another moment of silence. Several smaller delegations shifted uncomfortably. The representative from New Colonia, a human colony world, stood up. "The Council should also know that many smaller species have already approached us. They want to know if humanity would extend our defensive umbrella to protect them. They see our fleet as potential salvation from larger predators." "Absolutely not," barked Ambassador Quellen. "That would turn humanity into the galaxy's police force. It would give them power over us all." Elena shook her head. "We have no desire to police the galaxy, but we are willing to share our defensive doctrine. The Lazarus Doctrine, we call it. Build a defensive fleet so powerful that no one will attack you, but keep it purely defensive in nature. We can help smaller species implement similar strategies scaled to their resources and needs. You would share your military technology?" asked the Xyloth ambassador, antennae twitching with surprise. "Not our most advanced technology, but the principles, yes. The older designs that form our Dreadnought fleet. Simple, cheap, easy to maintain, and effective when produced in sufficient numbers. A small species cannot build 800,000 ships, but they might manage 10,000. That would be enough to make conquest too costly for most aggressors." Speaker Voresh leaned back in his seat, considering. "The Council will take your proposals under advisement. But Ambassador Voss, understand that many here see your fleet as a threat, not a shield. You have created a weapon that could enslave us all. Or free you all," Elena countered. "For the first time in galactic history, the largest military force belongs to a species that does not seek conquest. That could be the foundation for a new era of peace, not because species are weak, but because they are strong enough to defend themselves." The session continued for hours. Accusations were made, defenses were offered, proposals were debated. But slowly a consensus began to form. Humanity had violated the spirit of open cooperation, but they had not violated any actual laws. They had deceived, but they had not attacked. They had hidden strength, but they had not used it for aggression. When the session finally adjourned, Speaker Varesh approached Elena privately. "You have stirred up a hornet's nest, Ambassador. Some species will never trust you again. Others will seek to become your clients, trading their independence for your protection. A few will try to build their own hidden fleets, starting another arms race." "I know," Elena said tiredly. "But what choice did we have? Let the Korvax conquer us? That would have emboldened every aggressive species in the galaxy. At least now there's a counterbalance. Power that can check other power." "Perhaps," Varesh said. "Or perhaps you have simply revealed that the galaxy is more dangerous than we thought. That every species could be hiding weapons we cannot imagine. That trust is impossible." Elena had no answer for that. She returned to Earth to face another difficult audience. Her own people. The revelation of the Lazarus fleet had shocked humanity, as much as it had shocked the galaxy. Civilians demanded to know how their government had hidden such a massive project. Economic analysts calculated the resources that must have been diverted over generations. Families of the crew members who had served in secret demanded recognition for their sacrifices. Admiral Sarah Keating stood before a gathering of human leaders in Geneva, explaining the program. "We recruited volunteers who understood they might never see their families again. We built ships in hidden shipyards using resources carefully diverted from public projects. We created an entire shadow military infrastructure that operated for over a century. Yes, it was expensive. Yes, it required deception. But it worked. The Korvax withdrew without firing a shot. No human died in this confrontation. But at what cost?" demanded Senator Martinez, head of the Human Systems Alliance. "You took resources that could have improved lives, built schools, funded medical research. You diverted them to build weapons of war." "We built insurance," Admiral Keating corrected. "Insurance that we hoped would never be needed. Insurance that, as it turns out, saved our civilization from conquest. How much is freedom worth, Senator? How much would you have paid to prevent humanity from becoming Korvax slaves?" The debate raged across human space. Some called for the fleet to be disbanded immediately, the resources returned to civilian use. Others argued for expanding the program, building more ships to ensure humanity's safety. A few extreme voices called for using the fleet to establish human dominance over the galaxy. Marcus Chen watched the debates from his quarters aboard the Indomitable. Admiral Keating had asked him to stay with the fleet temporarily, helping to coordinate the integration of intelligence data. He found himself fascinated by the veterans emerging from suspended animation. They were disoriented, confused, struggling to adapt to a world that had moved on without them. Some discovered their spouses had remarried. Marcus Chen walked through the halls of the Sunset Valley Veterans Facility in Colorado. The building had been constructed quickly after the Lazarus Fleet revelation, designed specifically for the unique needs of people who had lost decades to suspended animation. It was more than a retirement home. It was a bridge between eras, a place where people from different times could learn to exist in the present. He found his grandfather's room overlooking the mountains. The old man sat by the window staring at a view he had not seen in 40 years. Thomas Chen had entered suspended animation at age 30. He had served 4 10-year tours with brief periods of waking in between. When he finally retired, his body was 40 years old, but the calendar said he was 78. His son had become a grandfather. His wife had died believing him killed in action, a lie the government had maintained to protect the secret. "Hello, grandfather," Marcus said softly. Thomas turned slowly. Recognition came, but it was complicated. "Marcus, you're older now. Last time I saw you, you were a child. Now you're a man. Time is strange when you sleep through it." Marcus sat in the chair beside him. "I wanted to tell you. I saw the fleet. I stood on the bridge of the Indomitable with Admiral Keating. Everything you told me was true." "Of course it was true," Thomas said, but without pride. Just weariness. "We built 800,000 ships. We kept them secret for over a century. We saved humanity. And now we sit in comfortable rooms and wonder why the world moved on without us." "You're a hero, grandfather. The whole world knows it now." Thomas laughed, a bitter sound. "A hero. Yes, they give us medals and plaques. They name schools after us. But they cannot give us back what we lost. Your grandmother, Marcus. I loved her. I married her. I promised to grow old with her. Instead, I grew old slowly in a frozen sleep while she lived and died without me. The government told her I was dead. She mourned me. She eventually remarried. I do not blame her. She thought she was a widow. But when I came back, she was gone. I lost her to save a humanity that she was no longer part of. Marcus did not know what to say. What comfort could he offer? His grandfather had sacrificed his life for a noble cause, but that did not make the sacrifice hurt any less. The other veterans. Marcus said instead, "How are they doing?" Thomas gestured toward the common areas visible through the window. Some adjust better than others. Captain Williams served one 20-year tour and came back to find his children grown. He struggles, but he has family. Lieutenant Sato served 3 tours and returned to find everyone she knew was dead. She does not struggle. She has given up. We all cope differently with being ghosts in our own world. The reality of the Lazarus fleet had shocked humanity, not just because of its size, but because of its human cost. The economic calculations were stunning. The resources diverted, the hidden infrastructure, the secret shipyards. But the human cost was more profound. 400 million volunteers had sacrificed normal lives. Many had served short terms and reintegrated successfully. But hundreds of thousands had served long enough to become displaced in time. Meanwhile, the political debate over the fleet continued to rage. Senator Martinez led a coalition demanding immediate demobilization. "We cannot sustain a military force of this size," she argued on news programs broadcast across human space. "The economic burden is unsustainable. The moral cost is too high. We should reduce the fleet to a reasonable size and return to normalcy." But Admiral Keating and her supporters pushed back. "The galaxy knows the fleet exists now. If we dismantle it, we signal weakness. Every aggressive species will see it as an opportunity. The Korvax withdrew because of our overwhelming strength. Remove that strength and they will return." President Okafor of the Earth government tried to find middle ground. She proposed the transition protocol. Gradually reduce the fleet from 800,000 ships to 200,000 over a 20-year period. The remaining vessels would be modernized and made more efficient. The process would allow for gradual demobilization of personnel and reintegration of veterans. "We cannot abandon the Lazarus Doctrine," President Okafor explained in an address to humanity, "but we can adapt it. We can maintain a defensive deterrent while reducing the burden on our economy and our people. We can honor the sacrifice of those who served while building a sustainable future." The proposal faced opposition from all sides. Hawks thought it was too much reduction. Doves thought it was not enough. But slowly a consensus formed. Humanity needed the fleet, but perhaps not all of it. The galaxy needed to see human strength, but not be terrified by it. Admiral Keating called a meeting of senior fleet commanders aboard the Indomitable. Marcus attended as part of the intelligence liaison team. The Admiral looked tired, older than her calendar age despite the years in suspended animation. "The politicians have made their decision," she told the assembled officers. "We will reduce the fleet gradually. Some of you will be decommissioned. Some ships will be scrapped. Others will be upgraded and kept in service. This is not the outcome we hoped for, but it is the outcome we have." "We sacrificed everything," said Captain Torres, the woman Marcus had interviewed weeks earlier. "We gave up our lives to build this deterrent. Now they want to dismantle it because it is inconvenient? They want to adapt it," Admiral Keating corrected gently, "and they are right to do so. We built the Lazarus fleet for a specific purpose, to deter aggression against humanity. We have succeeded. The Korvax withdrew. Other aggressive species are reconsidering their plans. The fleet has done its job. Now we must evolve to meet new challenges." She pulled up a star map showing human space and surrounding territories. "We are not alone in learning from this confrontation. Smaller species have approached us for help. The Minoran Compact wants to build their own defensive fleet. So does the Talarian Federation. They see what we accomplished and want to apply the same principles to their own defense. We are sharing the Lazarus Doctrine," Marcus added. "Not our most advanced technology, but the basic principles. How to build simple, effective, mass-produced defensive ships. How to maintain them efficiently. How to create a deterrent force that makes conquest too costly." One of the older commanders, a man who had served 6 tours spanning 70 years, spoke up. "So we spread the same burden we carried to other species? We teach them to sacrifice their people the way we sacrificed ourselves?" We teach them to defend themselves, Admiral Keating replied. Yes, there will be costs. Yes, there will be sacrifices. But those sacrifices will be made by volunteers who understand what they are giving up. And perhaps with enough species following this doctrine, we can create a galaxy where no one can conquer anyone, where peace exists not because species are weak, but because they are all strong enough to defend themselves. The meeting continued for hours, discussing logistics, timelines, and procedures, but beneath the practical discussion was an emotional reality. The veterans of the Lazarus fleet were being told their sacrifice was being reduced, literally dismantled ship by ship. Elena Voss faced her own challenges in the Galactic Council. The revelation of the Lazarus fleet had fundamentally changed galactic politics. Some species sought closer ties with humanity. Others pushed for isolation, fearful of human power. A few proposed restrictions on fleet sizes for all species, though no one could agree on enforcement mechanisms. The Korvax Empire remained silent, withdrawing behind their borders. But intelligence reports suggested they were conducting their own reassessment. High Commander Throcknor had been recalled to their homeworld. Rumors suggested he faced disgrace, possibly execution for his failure. The Korvax military was reportedly conducting extensive analysis of the confrontation, trying to understand how they had been so thoroughly deceived. One day, Elena received an unexpected communication request. It was from Throcknor himself, now apparently in some form of exile. She accepted the call, curious what he might want. The Korvax commander appeared on her screen, looking diminished somehow. His armor was gone, replaced by simple clothing. His forearms hung loosely at his sides. "Ambassador Voss," he said, his voice lacking its former arrogance, "I wish to speak with you before my final judgment is rendered." "What judgment?" Elena asked. "I am to be executed for failure. In Korvax culture, commanders who lose without fighting are considered cowards. It does not matter that fighting would have destroyed the fleet. It does not matter that withdrawal was the logical choice. I retreated, therefore I am disgraced." Elena felt unexpected sympathy. "I am sorry. You made the right military decision." "Did I?" Throcknor asked. "Or did I reveal a fundamental weakness in Korvax doctrine? We believe in technological superiority. We believe elegant solutions defeat crude ones. You taught us that we were wrong. Numbers matter. Redundancy matters. Willingness to sacrifice matters. These are lessons we never learned because we never needed to. Now the lesson will cost me my life. What did you want to tell me?" Throcknor leaned closer to the screen. "That you were right but also wrong. You said quantity has a quality all its own. You said your fleet would prevent war, but you have not prevented war. You have changed its nature. Now the galaxy knows that hidden fleets can exist. Species will build secret weapons. Arms races will occur in darkness. Trust has been destroyed.